saying, you're telling us you wouldn't be jealous if she made it with another guy.
Jealous?
Yeah, jealous.
No, man, I'm liberated.
What the hell does that mean?
I don't feel anything.
Oh, being liberated means you don't feel anything?
Yeah. I'm liberated.
You don't feel anything.
Once I felt something.
So it isn't a mystery that the cable television has become more perverse over time, and that its root goal is to play on the lusts of our flesh. We notice the new reckless and shameless culture of liberation that accompanies it, the rise in divorce, homosexuality, and identity confusion. This hookup culture. More single men, more single women, broken homes, and less wholesome, loving families. But what piece of media can we pinpoint to get a general idea of where this social and moral decline took its starting place? Well, a good point to begin would be none other than the infamous, sultry, and American as apple pie, Playboy magazine. Playboy magazine began its war on America culture in 1953, started by child prodigy and psychologist Hugh Hefner. And yes, this is the same 1953 when the mind control and culture creation councils of the Macy conferences began their conclusion. The infamous post-war cultural revolution era, where media, sex, drugs, and rock and roll would be employed to transform the nation forever. It is no coincidence why so many revolutionary forms of media began during this time, or revolutions in general, for they all played specific roles and were individually part of a grand scheme, a great work. Playboy magazine would take the driver's seat in the corruption of the American father, the corruption of the family man archetype, the objectification of the mother and daughter, giving rise to the culture of lust, the bachelor archetype, homosexuality, an operation of the homosexual lifestyle, turning the respectable, honest man into a lustful, emotionally immature boy whom prefers to play instead of produce. The Playboy would go on to be promoted in mass media entertainment, films, and of course the music industry, conditioning the generations of young men and old with covetous hearts and reprobate minds, selfish, egotistical, wanton, and disturbed. Not only was single life now sought out and preferred by the lusts of the flesh and pride of life, but traditionally, celibate single men became proud fornicators and abusers of sex. This formed what we have now called dating, a stringless and acceptable arrangement to defile the bodies of others freely, opposed to what used to exist prior, something called courting, which generally one would not proceed in unless one's intentions were honorable. The new and upcoming Playboy systematically removed the honor from masculine culture, and the bachelor, or aloof husband whom spent hours after work in the sporting houses and gentlemen clubs, preferred the company of other men for socializing, and women were basically sex objects or ornaments. Playboy magazine played on this psychology and used women's bodies as marketing tools. Though Playboy magazine did not start this culture, since it was well practiced during the 19th century, but mainly only amongst the bourgeoisie. Playboy refined the concept, simplified it, and as a mass commodity, distributed it to all four corners of America, bringing the debased and cancerous lifestyle to everyday, family, working men. And of course, following close after, into the 60s, the establishments produced its counterpart, the liberated, independent, middle-class single woman, with her own shows and magazines for conditioning, further splitting the man and the woman dichotomy and increasing the fracture within the family, and warping our perception of home. First, we must understand America prior to the 50s was always a diverse nation of multiple ethnic groups, neighborhoods and communities, religions and family structures. There was not the exact black versus whites and stereotype racial constructs that we have today. Things were a bit different, not as categorized and concrete. Though the nation was a mix of natives, melanated peoples of African descent, Asians and islanders, and many different types of European ethnic groups, Poles, Russians, Italians, Germans, etc. Not until the creation of mass media via Playboy magazine, television broadcasting, Life magazine, Time, Sports Illustrated, and the like, did the idea of whiteness and blackness truly take its cultural form. Only through the Fabian socialist elites and their mass media, public school districts, and malicious plans of integration and the civil rights movement could their plans to consume society be fulfilled. By forcing autonomous and independent communities to mix and integrate overnight, all while pushing lewdness, suburbanite propaganda, and commercialism through printed media. This is where and how the fabrication of American culture was created. Prior to this time, from the late 50s to the early 60s, such a concept did not exist. And with that American culture was sold the sexual degradation of the very popular Playboy magazine. Here we find that not only were communities and cities transformed, but also marriages and bedrooms. Playboy magazine set the precedent for all-out social sexual degradation, first by transforming the male not only into a pervert, but also into a superficial consumer. Playboy enculturated man with materialism. He now would have a new interest in his appearance, his image, and in things like fashion and those impressionable to women. In contemplating extramarital experiences, lusting after other women to feed his newfound sexual appetite, an insatiable one that craves new faces and bodies, and no longer appreciates the wife of his own. In fact, she is now undesirable, and marriage becomes no longer satisfying, but grievous. This psychological and spiritual reaction to lust programming is by design, and even promoted in shows like Married with Children. Even sexual addiction is often followed, pornography, and in extreme examples, the acquisition of prostitutes, or frequency of strip clubs. In fact, today, these things sound rather normal, yet they were unheard of in most communities prior to the era of Playboy magazine. Subtle as this simple nudie mag might have been, it fathered the long line of wicked material to come that would further distort the mind of modern man and inhibit the progress and health of the family dynamic, overall debasing society and fomenting a liberated and reprobate culture. As this debasement increased the amount of single men, with sexual perversion comes a twisted appetite and breeding ground for homosexuality. In fact, the bachelor or playboy culture became a haven for homosexual activity. Since family or monogamous relationships were avoided, time and opportunity was abound, mixed with depravity and anything-goes attitudes. The homosexual or curious could dabble in any dark pleasure they wished. Especially in the more affluent circles, bisexuality is commonplace, and many times a requirement. We find this example in Hollywood and the music industry. Which brings us to modern society, where the old subtle tricks of nudity and overt sexual suggestion of Playboy magazine are now everywhere. More elaborate, more bold, with darker intentions. Contrived nudity and homosexual innuendos are regularly used as a subtle form of incitement and routine desensitization.
Drinking Heineken Light prevents grill smoke from blowing in your eyes.
Yeah, no man can control the winds.
Heineken Light makes it okay to flip another man's meat.
No. You never flip another man's meat.
Award-winning Heineken Light is the best light beer you've ever tasted.
That's true. Can I have one?
Can I flip your meat?
No.
Suit yourself.
Similar to how pedophiles subtly groom their victims with sexual suggestive jokes, or even by showing them pornographic imagery, mass media hints and pokes at us with homoeroticism and innuendos to subconsciously condition us with their sexual agendas. Genital references are often used as well. Male or female genitalia are many times repeated and focused on to subconsciously arouse the audience. You may involuntarily create unwanted ideas or visuals in your mind. This is in fact a form of sensory abuse, a sexual assault on your spirit.
Wanna taste?
That's okay.
How can you say no?
I already have this. It's all natural. Are you?
Of course.
Really?
Sure, there's the green leaf on my package.
Oh, look at that.
Modern media programming today is notorious for this kind of lust triggering and thought provocation. Its biggest weapon of choice is, of course, nudity and the cliche and often pointless sex scene. Sex, nudity, and homosexuality are key concepts that will debase any audience when used in pattern and excess. It's no surprise that you will find the most popular shows having the most nudity, graphic sexual content, and gender politics written all throughout their scripts. Game of Thrones is a great example of lust and violence programming, mixing the experiences of pain and pleasure, which is an undetectable way to disturb and distort one's subconscious without them knowing. Similar to the 50 Shades of Grey programming that glorifies this exact concept of sexual bipolarism. Turning sex into some sort of demonic game or power struggle. In fact, many of these shows are designed to force people to commit adultery by lusting over characters on the screen. It is written, if we even look upon another with lust, we have committed adultery. These patterns are found all throughout the majority of popular cable series and franchises. This is called programming. The agendas and conditioning tactics do not change, just the show title, premise, and characters do. Like the new show Westworld, inspired by an old 70s film about robot prostitutes. More sex, more nudity, more violence. It's amazing how they can write convoluted and purposely confusing scripts to entice people enough to watch the same debasing concepts over and over again. But as they say, there are many ways to skin a cat. Though as the audience, we foolishly want to believe we are being entertained, until we finally wake up and realize that we are the cat.